Not in a moment of vanity, but in something simple: washing your hands, folding laundry, a flicker in the hallway mirror. And you pause, your eyes narrow, you lean in because something feels unfamiliar. The face looking back at you, it is you, but softer, paler, heavier in the eyes, marked by years you thought had passed without leaving a trace. No storm came, no crash of thunder, just 1,000 small choices. Skipped walks, missed meals, unspoken stress. That wrote silent lines across your skin. Aging doesn't knock at your door. It uses your toothbrush, sleeps beside you, laughs in your voice, until one day you wake up and realize you've been carrying it with you all along. But here's the part no one tells you. It's not the years that betray you. It's the habits, the slouch you didn't correct, the sleep you cut short, the glass of water you forgot to drink, the negative words you let circle your mind like vultures. Those little things, they don't just make you older. They make you look older, feel older, live older than you truly are. And if left unchecked, they quietly build a life that doesn't reflect who you really are inside. Because deep within you still lives that sharp-minded girl who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen. That proud man who used to wear crisp shirts and walk like he owned the sidewalk. That version of you who never asked, "Do I look tired?" Because you didn't. So now the question isn't, why have I aged? The question is, what have I let go of? Because your beauty was never meant to fade. It was meant to transform. And it's not too late, not if you know where to begin. But because it's forgotten how to be proud. Posture, one of the most underestimated signs of youth, and one of the first to vanish when we stop noticing our bodies. You see, the body remembers everything. It remembers the hours hunched over phones, the years spent leaning into grief, the decades of carrying burdens that no one else could see. Before long, standing straight feels unnatural. Sitting upright becomes a chore. And one day, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a store window. And for a moment, you don't recognize the figure staring back. Not because of your age, but because of your stance. You don't look tired, you look defeated. And that's a very different kind of aging, because posture doesn't just shape how others see you. It shapes how you see yourself. When your shoulders collapse inward, your lungs have less room to breathe. Your heart beats with less freedom. Your thoughts grow foggy from poor circulation. And your energy, it sinks, just like your spine. But the most dangerous part, you start to feel invisible, because the world responds to how you carry yourself. And when you shrink, it stops looking. There's a cruel irony to it. We spend our youth trying to stand out, and our later years slowly forgetting how to stand tall. But here's the truth that can change everything. Your body is still listening. Your back is still willing. Your spirit is still capable of straightening out one vertebra at a time. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to be young. You just need awareness. Start by stretching your chest open each morning, as if greeting life again. Let your spine remember the sensation of dignity. Practice walking into rooms as if you still deserve to be noticed, because you do. Age bends no one without permission. But habits, they will bend you slowly until the person in the mirror no longer reflects the pride within. So ask yourself, are you bowing from weakness? Or are you ready to rise 1 inch at a time? Because a strong posture is not just about looking younger. It's about telling the world, I still belong here. And worries over rest, sleep. We treat it like a luxury. We act as if it's optional, but make no mistake. Sleep is survival. And the less you honor it, the faster you age. It doesn't happen with a crash. It happens in fragments. You wake up tired. You move slower. Your skin turns dull. Your memory becomes a little less sharp. And you start blaming the years, when it's really the nights. Because when you sleep, your body is not shutting down. It's showing up, your cells repair, your brain declutters, your heart resets, your skin regenerates, and your soul finally exhales, but without deep sleep. Your immune system weakens, your face begins to droop, your eyes carry shadows that concealer can't hide. You become more reactive, less present, more forgetful, and worst of all, you stop feeling like yourself. It's not just fatigue, it's early aging in disguise, and yet, we fight sleep like it's the enemy. late night scrolling, worry-filled tossing, caffeine-fueled mornings masking exhausted souls. We whisper, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," not realizing we're speeding up the process. Let's be clear. There is no serum, no facial, no anti-aging product that can replace the work your body does in the sacred hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's when growth hormones peak. That's when your body heals. That's when your youth is preserved. The people who age the most gracefully, they don't just eat well or exercise, they protect their sleep like gold. So if you want to reclaim your energy, if you want to see the light return to your eyes, if you want your body to start trusting you again, start with sleep, turn off the noise, let the world wait, you've given enough. Now give back to yourself. Because aging isn't just about wrinkles, it's about restoration. And nothing restores you like the silent miracle of a full, healing night. But from your kitchen faucet, look closer. At the lines on your hands, the cracks around your lips, the cloudiness in your eyes, the creak in your knees. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you truly hydrated, not just drank, but replenished? Dehydration is the aging villain no one talks about. It doesn't announce itself with pain. It whispers through your skin. It fogs your thoughts. It makes your body slow and your soul feel tired. Because water doesn't just quench thirst. It conducts life. Every cell in your body floats in it. Your brain is nearly 75% water. Your joints rely on it to stay smooth. Your skin, it glows not from lotion, but from hydration deep beneath the surface. And your eyes, those beautiful windows to the world, they lose their shine when your body is dry. It's no coincidence that the elderly often complain of dizziness, dry mouth, and fatigue. It's not always age. It's often chronic dehydration that's been building for years. And the signs, they masquerade as aging, sagging skin, brittle hair, constipation, low energy, even confusion and mood swings. You see, dehydration doesn't just dry out your body. It dries out your vitality. But here's the beauty of it all. This is one form of aging you can drink away. Not with sodas, not with coffee or sweet teas, but with clean, honest, life-giving water. Make it a ritual, a glass upon waking before anything else, another with each meal, and one before you sleep. As if tucking your cells into bed, add lemon for detox, mint for refreshment, cucumber for skin. Let water be your quiet act of rebellion against aging, because no matter your age, the body has an incredible ability to rebound when nourished. Hydrated skin tightens, eyes brighten, muscles recover, organs smile. And suddenly, people start asking, have you done something different? Yes, you have. You remembered that youth is not always about looking younger. Sometimes it's about feeling fluid again, inside and out, so drink deeply. Not just for health, but for the life still pulsing inside you, waiting to shine again, one sip at a time, or who we've stopped believing we can be. But somewhere along the way, many of us fall into the trap of dressing down, not just our bodies, but our very spirits. Worn-out sweaters, baggy clothes hiding every curve, muted colors fading into the background. It's as if the wardrobe becomes a quiet surrender, a uniform for invisibility. And here's the truth that rarely gets said. Your clothes can age you faster than wrinkles ever will. Because when you stop caring about how you dress, the world starts to treat you like you're less, not intentionally, but through subtle, unconscious cues. Your posture slumps further. Your energy dims. You begin to shrink not just physically but emotionally. Yet this isn't about vanity. It's about honoring yourself. Your clothes should be armor, not chains. A way to express the vibrant soul still burning inside. Imagine the difference between a person who dresses with care, not to impress others, but to respect themselves, and someone who hides behind shapeless fabric, as if they've already given up on joy. There's power in choosing colors that spark life, in wearing fabrics that feel like a gentle hug, in selecting styles that say, I am here, I'm still vibrant, I am worthy. And it's never too late to start. Try this, look in your closet. Pull out the pieces that feel heavy with, I don't care. Replace them slowly with things that ignite a smile when you wear them. Not expensive clothes, not trendy styles, just garments that make you feel like your best self. Because the mirror might show lines, but your clothes can rewrite the story it tells. They remind the world, and more importantly, yourself, that age is not a deadline for joy, it's a beginning. So rise, dress with intention, and let your spirit shine through every thread. But in your spirit, it's the heaviness of constant complaining, the endless replay of what's wrong instead of what's right. A habit so easy to fall into, yet so hard to break. Negativity does more than cloud your mind. It carves deep lines in your soul, etching wrinkles not visible to the eye, but felt in every interaction, every glance, every silence. When you focus on what's missing, what's broken, what's unfair, you tighten your chest, clench your jaw, and furrow your brow. Over time, this habitual grumbling becomes a mirror, reflecting a life diminished, a heart hardened, a spirit weary. But here's the paradox. While complaining may feel like a release, it actually drains your vitality. It pulls you further from gratitude. It dims your inner light. It ages you from the inside out. And the irony, no one else suffers more from your negativity than you, because the mind and body are intertwined. What you nurture in your thoughts ripples into your health, your skin, your very essence. So how do we break free from this curse? Start small. Notice the complaints, catch them as they rise, and gently shift. From why me to what can I learn? From this is unfair to what beauty still remains. Gratitude isn't a magic pill, it's a daily practice, a deliberate choice to find light in the cracks. And with each shift, the lines etched on your soul begin to soften. Your face relaxes, your eyes brighten, your laughter returns. Because true aging gracefully isn't about hiding lines. It's about healing them from the inside out. So let go of the complaining curse, free your spirit, and watch as your whole being begins to glow again. In every moment, aging isn't a deadline, it's a doorway, a chance to shed what no longer serves you. Fear, doubt, comparison, and step into a version of yourself that's more authentic, more radiant, more timeless. You've learned how posture, hydration, sleep, clothing, and mindset shape how you age. But the real magic, it's in how you choose to live, when you embrace your journey. Every scar, every laugh line, every lesson. You become a story worth telling. Your beauty isn't about chasing perfection. It's about owning your truth, your spirit, your light. This is your time to reclaim what belongs to you, confidence that doesn't fade, joy that doesn't depend on mirrors, peace that grows deeper each day. So stand tall, not just in body but in soul. Drink deeply from the well of self-love. Dress in colors that make your heart sing, and surround yourself with positivity that fuels your fire. Remember, you are not alone on this path. We're in this together. Learning, growing, becoming timeless. If this journey has spoken to you, if you feel inspired to embrace your own unique beauty, then join our community, subscribe, share your story, and let's continue to lift each other up. Because aging beautifully is a revolution, and it starts with you. Thank you for listening. Here's to your timeless journey.